Hello and welcome to another submarine chat. Today we're going to talk about a Narco submarine incident. This is really interesting, unique, I am sure. So like all my videos, this is unscripted. I'll try to be quite quick, but I think it's a good introduction to the topic of narco submarines. So this is the world's most unlucky narco submarine. Before we go any further, I should just clarify the language. I call them narco submarines. That is a colloquial term. It's common in law enforcement, civilians in the region where they occur, and I'm sure the drug trafficking organizations also use the term. More technically, they are low-profile vessels. Most, including the one in this story, do not fully submerge. They're not true submarines. Even more technical, I'd call them an LPV-OM, where the OM stands for outboard motor. But let's keep it simple. We'll call them narco submarines. We know what we mean. If you see anyone in the comments explaining what a submarine is, you know how far into the video they watched. Let's get on. So narco submarines operate from Colombia up to Mexico, and the cocaine on them is then onward supplied mostly to North America. They affect all the countries that are highlighted yellow here. Colombia is orange, Mexico is where the red dot is. And they typically take two routes. They're mostly in the Pacific, and they can take the direct route, or they can go out around the Galapagos Islands. Ecuador, which is circled, is somewhat affected and has had some seizures of narco submarines, and in the past maybe even had some constructed in Ecuador. But the drugs, the cocaine, it's essentially a Colombian thing. Ecuador will feature in the story though. So how do you find and stop and arrest the people on a narco submarine? Well, the first way is with aircraft, long-range patrol aircraft, UAVs, and so on. These are excellent at finding narco submarines. Unfortunately, they can't stop a narco submarine and they can't arrest anyone. Helicopters are able to do a little bit more. They're not as good at finding them because of their range and so on, but they can find the narco submarine and they can stop it. And they stop it by using gunfire. Obviously, they don't shoot at the people, they shoot at the vessel itself or across the bows as warning. But a US Navy or US Coast Guard helicopter is well able to stop a narco submarine. And obviously other navies and so on as well. But helicopters can't do the boarding, not realistically. For that, you need some sort of surface vessel. And a warship or a Coast Guard cutter is perfect for that. These are slower, so they don't have the same range as the aircraft, but they can, when they're on the scene, they can obviously make the arrest as well. And a US Navy warship like this one needs a Coast Guard law enforcement detachment on board to make the actual arrest, but navies of several countries are involved in some way in this. Coast Guard cutters as well. The last way you can stop a narco submarine, it seems, is with a sailing ship. Now, this is pretty crazy, and I didn't think we'd ever see the day that this ever happened. No one is seriously suggesting that this is part of a strategy. But a few days ago, on October the 22nd, exactly this happened. An Ecuadorian Navy tool ship or sailing ship actually stopped a narco submarine. And you can see the narco submarine on the right, and you can see the wooden deck of the sailing ship and rigging and so on. So the sailing ship is really interesting. I think a lot of people don't realize that navies still operate sailing ships. The BA Gaius, and I'm saying that badly, apologies, is a pretty good example. It's pretty typical of what we call a tool ship in navies, and is quite large. It has over 15,000 square feet of sail. For propulsion, it also has a backup diesel engine, which is no surprise. So it can operate without the sails, but not very fast in either mode. I couldn't find reliable figures on speed, but it's not that fast. It has quite a large crew, though, including up to 80 trainees, and that is the secret. That is why navies have them. They're brilliant for training cadets. Here you can see the same ship when it visited New York back in 2012. And the Ecuadorian Navy, like other navies, use these ships to train large numbers of cadets in seamanship and teamwork. It's brilliant. They also look wonderful. The Narco submarine, on the other hand, is trying not to be seen. As I say, it's a low profile vessel. You can see how low it is in the water. It's actually very difficult to see. And you can see why people call them submarines, even though they don't truly submerge. And here you've got a guy trying to throw something off the back. I suspect that he's throwing off cocaine. This one is generally typical of Narco submarines, particularly the type with outboard motors. But there's actually a few things which are a little bit unusual about it, just a tiny bit. If we look at the outside of it, we can get some hints on the inside. I've been looking at Narco submarines for about 12, 15 years and logged over 200 incidents with them. This one is a tiny bit different, but you can see a row of blobs on the back. They are likely to be the gas filler, so to put the fuel in. They also have a hatch on one side. This is a little bit unusual. Nowadays, increasingly, narco subs do not have this. Instead, they take all of the cocaine out through the cabin. But you'll see the cabin doesn't have a hatch on it, which is a bit unusual again. At the back, of course, you've got 3 outboard motors. This is less stealthy than if they had an inboard motor, but these provide really good reliability. They're ubiquitous, so they're really hard to trace. If you take the serial number off them, they're very hard to prove where they came from. We can guess, based on these external clues, that the forward hull of the submarine is essentially fuel, a bunch of fuel tanks. It needs a massive amount of fuel. It's got a range, generally speaking, about 2,000 nautical miles, a really long way. The cargo will be somewhere in the middle. I think on this one, it's a little bit further back than on most others. I've drawn it with a tunnel coming from the back of the cargo area to the crew area and a couple of fuel tanks. That's very typical. They normally do have that, and they can use the tunnel for sleeping, but also for moving cargo in and out, and maybe moving cargo around to allow them to adjust the trim and buoyancy of the vessel while it's at sea. And the crew live at the back. There's 4 crew on this one, 3 Ecuadorians and a Colombian, now arrested, of course. Normally they have 3 crew, 4 isn't unusual though. And they live in very cramped basic conditions at the back, sometimes sleeping on fuel tanks and so on. So this narco sub probably could carry 1.5 to 3 tons of narcotics. 6 tons is about the maximum of these vessels. They generally don't carry the full capacity though, because how much cocaine they're carrying has more to do with the market and the deals and so on than the capacity of the vessel. Okay, so that was the most unlucky narco submarine in the world. It was actually interdicted by a sailing ship, something out of Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever. I think it's very cool. Thank you for listening. Hopefully it's piqued your interest in narco submarines. Like all my videos, this one was unscripted. It's probably very obvious in some places. It's not monetized though, so please like, subscribe, share. I think it's really cool. And I plan to do more videos explaining narco submarines in more detail if people are interested. Thank you.